Hello and welcome back to A Shark's Perspective. So I was headed to speak at a really good conference in Boston in the spring of 2020, one of every one of the in-person events that obviously changed, in this case to virtual, due to COVID-19. The events industry, as everyone knows, was hit extremely hard, albeit decimated for many event owners. But I wanted to speak with someone who is behind the scenes of a well-known and well-established event on how they were leveraging community for pushing through all of this and how, like many businesses, continuing to pivot in the right direction. Byron White is a serial entrepreneur, the founder of Writer Access, and several other businesses, including Freelance Access, LifeTips, ideaLaunch, and he's also chair of the Content Marketing Conference. And on this episode, we'll discuss what goes on behind the scenes of a conference going from in-person to virtual, great content and selecting great speakers, bandwidth problems just before going virtually live, chicken teriyaki on a stick, Andrew Davis and Hanley, Andy Cresadina, that middle seat where I put my macchiato, hand sanitizer Clorox wipes, comedy club to conference, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a conference chair with a conference shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Byron, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. For those who haven't seen you at Content Marketing Conference or heard your story before, would you mind giving us a brief overview of your story and your career to date?
Sure, Kenneth, great to be here with you as
You
well.
bet.
Thanks for having me. So quick story in a nutshell. I'm a serial entrepreneur, started a few different companies. The current company is called Writer Access, which just has announced the marriage to Designer Access, which is simply another company that we started. We're super excited about Writer Access and Designer Access. We also launched a conference 6 years ago. We're actually going on our 7th year in about a year from now. And I think that's what we wanted to focus on talking about. That's called Content Marketing Conference. Prior to that, I started companies like Content 6, a full-service content marketing agency. I started LifeTips, another interesting company which offers 120,000 tips on how to make your life better. At the time, it was competing with About.com. Prior to that, I started a company called Freelance Access, which was a graphic arts placement agency that did some fun stuff in representing creative professionals in a very different, unique way, which caught fire quickly, and I eventually sold that company to Aquent, another company where I became the director of worldwide sales for a couple of years. So serial entrepreneur in a nutshell, love starting businesses and helping entrepreneurs find their way and find uplift in the marketplace quickly and efficiently so they can grow without a VC funding. That's what I'd love to see everybody do. There's my story in a nutshell.
Perfect. So, Content Marketing Conference in 2020, your event got canceled for some obscure health reason that you may have heard a little bit about called COVID or COVID-19 or 20 or something like that. But, it's been an interesting year with everything that went on with the pandemic. Walk us through what that process is like mentally for you as an event organizer. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. It's never early enough for some people and always too late for others who are trying to find out. I mean, it's so many changes that you have to just putting on a successful event, let alone tweaking and pivoting it at the last minute because of some healthcare crisis going on in the world.
So here's the story, and I'll unfold it in a way that you can feel free to ask questions throughout, but I'll take 2 or 3 minutes to give you the full story.
Sure.
The situation was this. With our event being held on April 21st, we were in the danger zone of not knowing what to do leading up to the actual event. We of course needed to be concerned as early March approached. I actually went out to social media marketing world out in San Diego to see how they were going to handle the situation. They pulled the event off, snuck it in right before everything got canceled, and we were very impressed and learned a lot with how they managed the whole process. However, things kept creeping up. It was a day-to-day situation. When we came back early March, we started planning. We were still getting signups. All looked pretty well. But around mid-March, we started to see some problems. We saw some shutdowns publicly. We, of course, are here in Boston. There was a pharmaceutical conference that, as you may remember, was almost the start of the chaos that ensued. So we were left with a very precarious situation. And to give your listeners an understanding of how touchy and edgy this is, we basically have a couple different parties to be concerned with. One is certainly our attendees and their health and safety and allegiance and alignment with government rules and regulations. We also have sponsors that are anxious to generate leads and feel a lot of pressure to, want to deliver on what we've promised them, which is great connections and connectivity. We have speakers that have families and plans and, are trying to understand how this is all going to flush out. We then have vendors that we have promises and commitments with that need to, be updated, and we need to be updated on their end with what are their policies for cancellations. So needless to say, our marketing team, Marie, Sarah, Heather, the team was just living day to day, trying to negotiate and learn as much as we could about all parties concerned that I just mentioned as to what we should do and what the right move was. So we got the official word, government mandate, large gathering, well, first short gatherings, banned, then large gathering banned. So we finally escalated to the conference being banned. We had to begin making arrangements and making the big decision. And the big decision was, do we postpone this and throw this out, or do we try something new and different? Namely a virtual conference, which for us was very new and different. We had never done anything like it before. We didn't really have, I had attended one virtual event, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, with a very robust software platform that sort of created an actual virtual experience with trade show booths that you could interact with and sessions that you could dive into and live presentations going on, but we were seeing the virtual version of it. So we began saying, all right, well, we can't exactly do that unless we spend a ton of money, and 4 weeks out from the conference, a little bit difficult to pull that all together. So instead, we decided to build our own custom platform, basically, and to take this experience in a way that we knew we could control what we were doing and how we could do it, and not have to rely upon third-party services that we would need to get to know. We decided to just go for it. And we didn't really know what was going to happen. We actually had, bandwidth problems literally as early as 3 or 4 hours prior to the conference. We had some code that was leaking memory, and we were trying to solve the problem. It had to do with the search results, the search technology that we had deployed. So it was crazy. But the bulk of our time was spent doing what we know how to do best, and that is to communicate with our customers, our sponsors, our attendees, let them know what we're doing and how we're doing it. And the big decision was, do we want to use this as an opportunity to get this education, to get these 50 sessions and keynotes and 9 workshops? Do we want to harbor that for just our 600 people, or do we want to use this as an opportunity to showcase this knowledge to the marketing world? And we opted for the latter. So we opened CMC up for free because we felt it was an opportunity to give back to the community while we're all hunkered down, and we decided to just go for it. And we knew that some of our attendees that had prepaid money for a ticket might be upset with that, but we managed all of those cases individually. We communicated what we were doing and what we were, how we were trying to help the marketing planet be a better place by sharing this education. And naturally, we gave everyone a free ticket to CMC 2021. We did the same with our sponsors. So if this was a failure in any way, shape, or form, everyone would have, a goodwill to the future of being able to come to CMC in the future for free. So we mitigated some risks and made it all happen, put it together, and kerplunk. We launched it. It was monstrously successful. As early as 2 or 3 weeks out, we started seeing people sign up by the thousands, and we ended up attracting basically 15,000 people that registered for CMC, well beyond the scope of our normal 600-person conference. So that's the story behind it, but I'll let you dive in with some questions. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic description. I mean, just being able to give something like that away for free and being able to leverage that in so many ways to educate, give away. That's why I was glad to participate in it, and just to know that you're able to also leverage that for future events. I mean, people are going to remember that kind of goodwill go forward. Plus, you had some amazing speakers. So, I mean, I just think about the logistics all the time. I've got a lot of friends in this space as a speaker. Speaking at a lot of events, I've talked to a lot of people and what they've gone through. And now I've got examples of people in Vegas and Boston and everywhere else where a lot of the hotels and casinos that have all been decimated by this. They run through not only their own jobs being laid off or furloughed, and a lot of the events are having a tough time trying to get in touch with those people once they started cutting them out. And just while you've got people screaming at you 5 to 6 days a week, I know events who have had problems getting in touch with the event planners at hotels, for example, that were only working 1 day a week. So it's really logistically just such a challenge to pull off even a successful event, but let alone pull off a successful one at the last minute like you had to pivot to and did tremendously well. So kudos to you. But I'm interested about conferences in general. There's so many conferences out there today. I get approached all the time about normal in-person conferences, obviously a lot more with virtual now. Even in Boston, where you are, there's so many excellent conferences. Why did you start a conference about content marketing? What was it about that form of marketing? And how do you make your event stand out in a crowded field going forward? At least prior to COVID-19, it was tough enough, but with events and how they'll pivot going back, what are you sort of looking at to bring people in to a conference in the future?
Sure. Well, I guess the first, but there were about 5 questions there, but I'll try to hit 1 or 2 of them. Kenneth, let me begin by saying that content marketing conference is not our full-time job here.
Sure.
Right. So this is a side business for us that we started very specifically with a mission to gather and harbor great knowledge, great wisdom, great insight from great speakers like you that could help our audience raise their game, advance their career, grow their business organically the content marketing way. So we went into this business knowing that A, we didn't want to necessarily profit from it. B, we just wanted to use it as a harbor for knowledge and information that we could share with particularly our freelance writers and strategists and other audience members that are part of our 16,000 and growing freelancer database that couldn't afford to go to a conference that typically, I mean, some of them definitely could, believe me. They make a lot of money with us and with other clients as well. So everyone is, it's a gig economy now, and marketplaces like ours are really growing because of even in a recession, we continue to grow and prosper because people are outsourcing content because they can't afford full-time staff or they're downsizing. But anyway, so we're cheating a bit, and that enabled us to open this up free for everyone this year. And that's a little bit different than a business like, say, Content Marketing World, our competitor, who literally makes their living and employs many people as a result of hosting a really great big conference.
Right.
So we were at an advantage going into the pandemic so that was the first thing to mention. But how we pull these off, how we make them great, including the virtual experience we were just put together, is very simple. Great content. It's not rocket science. We vet people, and that, Kenneth, because you experienced that with me.
Sure.
Bless your heart, by the way. It's like, Kenneth, hang in there, man. You knew all the speakers. You've interviewed them all, and you had a great presentation. But we're very careful with who we bring in and how we bring them in. I vet everyone out personally. We look not only at decks, but in practice runs of sessions, and really try to make wise decisions where, is this session going to add value? Does it have tactical value? Can people put this to work when they leave the session and the show? And that is a very hard job. And, to be honest, it's hard to do that job and my normal job of running the other businesses, but I have a passion for it, and I know that our freelancers, if nothing else, will enjoy it, and I know our attendees love what we put together because we
Absolutely.
go all out, both with the live show and the virtual experience, of which we're doing both. But to your last question, I think was, what are we going to do moving forward? That's a very interesting question, and I think it's time to see some conferences step up and make some decisions like we have. We have announced 100% that we are publicly going to have a virtual experience moving forward, and we're going to be selling tickets virtually moving forward. We are entering a new marketplace with new needs, and people are ready, willing, and able to learn virtually, much like they're doing now and what they're listening to. So we are all in with a virtual experience. That might cannibalize our live show. That might, decrease our ticket price. We might lose money. Who knows? We lose money anyway in the show. So from our perspective, it's just losing a little bit more money, but we do it again for other reasons. We're here to bring the best education that we can to as many people as we can. Typically that had just before the pandemic, that included just our freelance base, but now it includes really everyone. So you can buy a ticket right now for CMC 2021 for, $350. And that'll get you access to the CMC previous 3 years of the recording, the virtual experience we put together, as well as everything, that we're putting together. That ticket, Kenneth, would typically sell for $1,600, so, again, we might be shooting ourselves in the foot, but, dang it, we have great education, great material. We want to make it available to the world. And that's what our mission is.
Agreed. So as you start looking at in-person events in the future, other than vaccines now being a key part of a consideration, what do you start thinking about in terms of really how to change a lot of the live events? I've always been a germaphobe. I've had way too many sinus infections that have always given me pause around every bit of cold and flu season, and anybody sneezes, I run like hell to get away from them. But just thinking about things like sanitizer coming up and the hygiene and seating people 6 feet apart is just not things that we necessarily would have ever thought of before today.
Right.
Or the insurance rider you have to have. I mean, good grief.
Yeah. I think it's going to change, but I don't think it's going to change too dramatically from our perspective. Here's why. We've always had a great little boutique-y conference of maximum 600 people. That is the max that we could fit in our large keynote room with a massive stage set up, which we love doing, and 120-foot long widescreen. I mean, we want the show for the live people to be really well, but we're going to limit the number of people that we allow into the live session, and we're going to see people probably post-pandemic every other seat. Why not? Whenever I go to a conference, I like sitting with nobody next to me anyway.
Same
so
here.
Why not just make that a standard? But I think that having hand sanitation everywhere, anywhere you would touch something, like you walk in a door, on both sides of that door, there needs to be hand sanitization. You need to move away from buffets, and you need to have hand passed foods on sticks.
Exactly.
So bring on the chicken teriyaki. So on a stick. So look,
that's funny.
We're never gonna end our quest to network together and to meet and greet and see people in person. Nothing will replace that experience, and nor as a human would any of us really want to. But as long as chairs of conferences step up to the plate and spend the money, not allow anybody in that has a fever of more than 100, and it's so easy. You don't even have to touch somebody to take their temperatures.
Exactly.
It's just that there are devices now that they're already in circulation that right next to your temple, boom, your thermometer. So that's what we're going to be doing, and we will have a live event certainly in 21, probably moving forward. It's just we'll take it one step at a time and see what the response is. But we are also committed to going virtual and committed to selling virtual tickets in advance, unlike many other shows that kind of wait until they're almost sold out and then they, the doors shut with the tickets. And then, oh, by the way, those of you that haven't subscribed, or haven't purchased a ticket yet, what a coincidence. We decided to take this virtual 2 hours ago, so we're going to film it. No, that's not the way to go. Be transparent. Let people buy a ticket for a reduced rate to see the experience virtually. Spend the money to get the cameras in every room, which we've done for the last 3 years. Spend the money. So it's more expense, but you have to do it. You have to do it.
Yeah, well, I'd agree. And I always get frustrated when the seat next to me is not open, and then somehow I'm forced to move my macchiato, and then it becomes a problem. So I get it. But, literally when you think of just going to the back of the room and grabbing water out of a water dispenser, I mean, it is crazy to think that now people are going to be paranoid of touching the massive water jug. So it's just an interesting world that we're living in. I credited Drew Davis, who was on episode 227, if you're scoring at home. I credited him specifically with giving a great virtual keynote at your event because he poured so much time into his presentation. Granted, he's got the resources, unlike a lot of speakers, to spend, he told me, 2 weeks filming it. And I know somebody that's his video editor who spent, a week plus editing 2 terabytes of video. But it's a great example, really, of how you can turn it up a significant notch as a keynote as well. And it just showed the level of expertise that somebody can bring to a speaking event. So I'm curious, with all speakers, what are your expectations then as an organizer now, as somebody who's seen speakers in person and keynotes and sessions like mine? What are your expectations go forward as an organizer with speakers going forward?
I see a few things. First of all, hats off to Andrew Davis, who is not only a fantastic and engaging and enlightening keynote speaker with the words that come from his mouth and the way that he presents, he's also, as you mentioned, an incredible production artist. Basically. I mean, he has vision. He knows what's engaging and what's not in a digital format. So he's a rare breed, though, I'll tell you. It's hard to emulate his style. So. But I think that ironically, if you look at our video track, who had some terrific people in it, videos coming at us, and I think people are beginning to self-edit and learn software like Premiere and After Effects and some of the many other software, ripping things together. Even Camtasia, not that hard. Andy Cristodino had a great presentation that he just ripped together on his desktop. Walking through his methodology of how he creates an article, walking through the steps and the 10 hours that he puts into it and how it rolls out and what he does and what tools he uses to produce that. I mean, that's cool stuff. And there were scenes where they're looking at him and he's just talking in front of the camera. Then, boom, we zoom into his desktop. And there's just so much potential out there. So, yeah, I think the future will design presentations around that virtual experience, and maybe you'll even see some of those pre-recorded sessions at conferences like ours. I know I'm considering it, where we can get more interesting speakers that don't want to attend a live event, but they can be there virtually. Why not? But I think there is something about being live. So there's a balance. There's a balance, Kenneth, and we're all going to let our audiences decide what the right balance is.
Agreed. And I've done video production for a big chunk of my career, and I told him when we spoke a few weeks ago that it just sort of woke up my eyeballs a little bit with how I need to start using my Premiere skills more in a lot of the different video editing platforms. It just, I've got to get a light board as well, because that was fantastic as well, just to see somebody not only just do video on a normal virtual presentation, but then pop in with this cool light board and do it all. It was fantastic. But I've spent a big chunk of my own life helping companies grow with a lot of lead gen sales and marketing. I'm always curious, is even with a conference organizer on a content show, how do you focus on growing your numbers of attendees what are the collection of tactics or strategies you've seen work well in the event space to help drive more attendance? Is it content, email, pay-per-click, all of it? What sort of gets you excited about driving that kind of growth?
Well, I think creativity is really where we have tended to focus our energy and effort. This year's theme, for example, fortify your smartitude, humanize your brand. that was thought through. And we knew that not just was it a good sort of a tagline, but we knew we could do some creative things with it. Humanizing your brand is kind of an interesting concept. So we ran a lot of different banners and promotions and constantly came up with new, fresh, creative. One year we had a superhero, campaign that was really interesting. Anne Handley got on the stage,
Yeah.
and her first opening words were, I really impressed and love what Byron has done with CMC, but I'm even more impressed with what they did with me. And
Yeah.
it showed this superhero woman that we created of her with, a muscular chest and beautiful, Anne version. She's already beautiful,
Right.
but right, it was just, she just loved it. And so did all the speakers. We did that for all the speakers. We were leveraging our speakers beautifully. To us that with cool stuff that they were excited to promote. We did these graphics. We had sort of an Andy Warhol theme another year where we did these funky graphics of each speaker's head and put them in sort of a, Marilyn Monroe sort of, look and feel, illustrated hybrid sort of headshot role. They loved that and wanted to use that in the social sphere. So, it's just on and on and on. You just have to be creative. I mean,
Yeah.
when you're marketing to marketing people, trust me, really difficult.
Exactly.
Like they have high expectations. It's tough to get them to stop in their tracks and pause and say, interesting. But it was just constantly banging out fresh new content, seemingly weekly. Certainly every other week or two, we're coming up with dreaming up a new banner campaign or promotion to blast out there, or trying to leverage something. But it's hard to do. And like my team is like 3 people, counting me.
Yeah.
So, and that's people running the logistics of the show, the logistics of the speaker, and the marketing, and the content, and the creativity, and cracking the whip on me, which is pretty much should be a full-time job, for somebody, but it's not. But you know what I mean? So it's just like a lot. It's a lot.
Absolutely. Well, and I think the pinnacle comment you could get would be have somebody like Ann Handley, who I think is amazing, come up to you and say, Byron, I think your content is amazing. That's kind of the gold standard once she would say anything like that. But she's just so many great speakers, and that's got to be just tough in a content marketing conference to have anybody talk about your own kind of content. But another part of that brilliant creative that you had, and this is somebody as a former failed stand-up comedian who's gone on stage many times in smoke-filled bars over years past. I love and respect that you inject a fair amount of comedy into your shows, especially like Mike Albanese, who I've seen MC a lot of events. He's fantastic. Why is comedy something important you do to inject in your shows? What's the inspiration for that?
I think we would all agree that it's time to end all of this bad, boring content that we're creating and pouring out at a rapid pace. So we recognize that early on, and we recognize there's an opportunity to really do something different here. And we got excited about that and decided to not only say, yeah, let's do it, but to really bake it in as a separate track, a separate zone, if you will, that people could go down. And I got to tell you that, like you, over the years, people really commented on the fact that we made comedy part of the learning. And we did that. First of all, it was hard to figure out how to do that, right? So the challenge there was you have these comedians that are not really related to marketing, but how can you find people that are just really funny and have some corporate experience and understand this, I call it the intersection between comedy, marketing, and business growth. And that's really what we're trying to understand. So we were lucky. I scoured the world and the web and found people like David Nehill, and Sarah Cooper, who were just like so fantastic and spot on, for what I was trying to accomplish, which is that intersection. Tim Washer, Ron Tite, just on and on. Andrew Tarvin, amazing. He was one of our keynotes this year, But I also was not afraid to experiment with all of this. And, Kenneth, the first year we did this, kind of interesting. We said, all right, here's what we're going to do. we're going to create a good environment. We're going to get marketing professionals and some really high-end people to sit in a room, and we're going to do like a half-day kind of a TED Talk style where you have 12 to 15 minutes on the stage to do your thing. And we're going to get 10 people on the stage, and we're going to see how it goes. We decided to do it in a place called Laugh Boston, which is a comedy venue, and it was amazing. People loved it. We had only about 100 people that attended it, but we had some presentations that were really world class and took on and embraced that topic that I threw at them, which was that intersection concept, and they really did an amazing job. So we started with this foundation, and then everybody talked about it. Like those 100 people told the other people that missed it, that I don't want to miss this next year. You need to do this on the main stage. So that's exactly what we did. So we took that, and then we merged it with another concept, which was just comedy club. As I got to know some of these amazing speakers, AJ Wilcox, for example, he loves karaoke, but he's like, Byron, can we do the comedy keynote thing, but then let's go and let's do karaoke and let's do a comedy club.
Yeah.
So we'll get the keynote speakers to then to be, to have sort of a marketing keynote-esque presentation, but then 2 hours later we'll see them with a cocktail in our hand on doing raw comedy, raw stand-up on the stage. And I have to tell you, that was the aha moment that I said, this is going to work. This is a keeper. To see these personalities and these terrific performers, in a serious but funny exploration in a keynote setting, and then to see them swearing on the stage and poking fun at the world and
or
practicing
themselves.
What they just preached to us was amazing. So that became something truly special, and even some of the failures have been, which we've had, of people on the stage that took some risk and took some chances, because I said, damn it, go for it. That maybe didn't, get, a standing ovation because of their comedy keynote or their, mostly the comedy keynotes I'm referring to here, but it was edgy, it was different. And that's what we need. That's what we need.
Yeah. And, it's funny because I've seen some speakers who, with comedians, if you go to a comedy club and you perform, you see everybody fail. You pretty much have to fail a little bit to learn how to get better at the craft. And that was a long time ago in my own past. But I see people who maybe see themselves funny in a group, in an agency or brand, and then they go up on stage and they're not funny. Or I see people that their version of funny is maybe showing a cartoon from The Marketunist, the brilliant Tom Fishburne, and that doesn't exactly, it's not the same thing as telling jokes and getting an audience energized. It's different. It's funny in a different medium or a different way, and it just really, it's an interesting intersection. I don't necessarily credit, Andrew Davis, for example, as a comedian anyway, but he's a good example of that same thing. People want to be infotained, and that's one of the things I really respect about him, that his show is as much about entertainment as it is about, say, tactical information. So I'm curious then, you've put on quite a few events. You've seen a lot of speakers come and go. Who is your favorite speaker of all time? I know they're all your favorite children, but is there one that's just stood out to you over your career, either at conferences you've seen at your own event or others maybe you've attended also as well?
Boy, I would not be doing justice to my respect for all of the great speakers that have spoken at our conference. It's just our conference, not to mention other conferences I've seen. But I think the answer to that is who touches your heart, or who makes you laugh and cry hysterically. I think that if I think back on the many great speakers, Steve Jobs, is probably one of the most moving presentations I've ever seen. Didn't see it live, but people that have the ability to change how you think and how and what you do after their presentation. There's a gentleman named Kevin Roberts who I saw speak many years ago. He wrote a book called Sisimo, and he gave a presentation that was just absolutely like nothing I'd ever seen. The book is about storytelling, way before storytelling was as popular as it is now in this furious and fabulous content marketing world that we play in. But he gave a presentation that was talking talking about the elements of great storytelling, and the way that he told that story about storytelling, moved the audience to the point where 30-40% of the people in the audience left crying, and just like, it was crazy, but it was powerful because he got to the essence. Now he was an advertiser. He was the chairman of Saatchi and wrote his book about the 1 minute commercial and storytelling and how important it needs to be that we preserve that as we migrate into this fast and furious world of television and multi-channeled approach and watered down creative and spammy infomercials. I mean, he was getting to the root and the elements of storytelling in a really passionate, creative way. So, those are my thoughts on what makes a great keynote presenter. But I'll tell you what, some of the presenters out there, they're offering this tactical advice, and they're doing it in the ways that excites you and motivates you to go back and try it yourself. Those people deserve some credit too, because they're changing, they're advancing careers, and they're making business happen and make it work. So, I didn't really answer your question. No favorites for me. More of like, who can touch my soul, who can touch my heart, who can make me laugh, and if you can do that, you've got me, you've got me and probably many other people that are looking for that.
Agreed. No, I was going to say that if you could include me on that list, but if I come somewhere just after Steve Jobs and I can inject a shark story, that's okay too. So I have one last business question. If somebody wanted to put on their own event in the future, because I mean, obviously a lot of these are going to shake out. You're going to see a lot of them disappear. I've known a few of them that went bankrupt, and maybe they'll reemerge at some point. But what's the most important business advice that you would give somebody as far as planning their own event, whether they're starting it or they've got one? I'm not trying to give away any secret sauce. Let's say if they're having a non-content marketing conference outside of Boston, and obviously yours has a much bigger national appeal, but what would be the advice you would give them as far as how to put on a successful event from a business standpoint?
Sure. Number one, plan on losing money the first few years.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to,
Yeah.
build it for the long haul, not the short haul.
Such a great point.
Number two, you've really got to be careful with selecting speakers. You've got to learn to select speakers that are not self-promotional, that are not going to embarrass you by standing up on the stage and talking about their products and services.
Amen.
And how you do that is really important and really it needs creativity. I'll give you a couple of my favorite tips and advice. It's interesting. When you read over, we get hundreds of people that want to apply to speak at CMC. When I see a pitch that begins with, I've done this, I want my company is great, even the way they write their profiles is fascinatingly different from a true professional that's polished and understands the name of the game, which is to let your thoughts be the leader, not your business or services or accomplishments. Hence the name Thought Leader, right? I think that's really key. So you've got to find good people, and you've got to see where they speak and how frequently they go back to speak at those sessions, those conferences. You've got to look at track records. You've got to have make sure that you've got good content. And I've been blessed to be able to see through shallow presentations that don't have a lot of depth, and to try to either encourage, work with those speakers to create better presentations, or to master the art of finding those presentations that are turnkey and ready to go. I think the final thing is, it's interesting, and I think I worked with you in a little bit. I've worked with every speaker with their session descriptions. It sounds crazy, right? But to me, that becomes a critical element to get them understanding the goals and the objectives. If you look at any session description on Writer Access, it basically starts with what's the problem, what are the complexities in the next sentence with that problem, and then what is this session going to offer as a solution?
Yes.
Right? It's a really simple formula.
Fix a specific problem.
Exactly. And the complexities are tricky, and that's where you can have fun creatively. And then the bullet points of what you're going to leave with, what you're going to be left with, are critical because people skim read. But I've gotten a lot of comments, about, why they were attracted to CMC, and a lot of people said, those sessions were really good. And every speaker I've worked with the back and forth, I could show you countless, like, Byron, this is awesome, and I was just taking what they've done and spinning it around a little bit into that formula that I described. I'm actually sort of using their same words or trying to get a little deeper than they were scratching the surface on with either the problem that was crisply defined, the complexities to the problem, and the solution that session is going to bring to the table. So simple, but you've got to get that right because that sets the tone for what you want them to accomplish. And it actually begins to change what they're going to present, hopefully, and how they present it.
Agreed.
So
well, the good news is you're paying attention very closely to the content you're presenting, which unfortunately a lot of brands do not do, Event Space or any other. So I didn't get to ask you this year, hopefully next year, but I asked this of all of my guests, and you're in Boston, which is not too far from Boston Harbor and where there's a lot of beautiful great whites, but I ask this of every guest that's been on a shark's perspective. What is your favorite kind of shark and why?
I am wonderfully passionate with the sharks that swim in Bora Bora.
Yes.
They are so cool and so fascinating, and you can literally just pet them. There is no attack, elements to the sharks in that part of the world. They don't attack humans. They don't feed off that. They feed, I think, off like plankton, like whales. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, they mostly feed on dead fish.
Exactly. And so you can actually feed them. We went on and swam with them. My wife and I went on our honeymoon there many moons ago, and really, really cool. Now, having said that, the sharks on the East Coast here, particularly on Cape Cod, not so popular. Beaches are being closed down. We need to make sharks more friendly. We need to make great whites more friendly. How do we do that? Kenneth, we're leaving that assignment to you. You're the king of sharks.
I'm trying one podcast at a time. I'm adding a lot of that content in, but Bora Bora has such an abundant population of black-tip reef sharks, which are absolutely beautiful. I have a tattoo of one as well. It's one of my many shark tattoos, oddly enough, but I love black-tip reef sharks in person. There are other species, but they're beautiful sharks. Well, Byron, it's a special time in the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
Bring it on.
All right. Number 1, session description, or those 3 key takeaways that everybody wants in bullet form after the session description paragraph.
Session description. To articulate the wisdom and insights and intelligence of the speaker.
Perfect. All right, another question for a Bostonian, and we'll talk parks. Boston Commons, a beautiful park that I've been to many times near the city center, or a park what feels like nearly as old, Fenway Park.
Ooh, that's a tough one for me.
Yeah.
I'm a real nature loving guy, but I of course love baseball and the history of Fenway Park. Coin toss, let me flip it in the air. I'm going to go with Fenway Park.
Beautiful. All right, number 3. This is for a good in-person event question. Hand sanitizer or Clorox wipes?
I'm going to probably have to go with Clorox wipes because they're so versatile. And You can just use them on your car steering wheel. Hands, car steering wheel. You can even use it in a handshake if you want.
People need to, we see these trusted brand surveys every year. The 2 most trusted brands today should be Lysol and Clorox, and hands down, that's it. Nothing else. Number 4, Dark chocolate or milk chocolate?
Milk chocolate.
All right, perfect. Number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Whew. I'm going to go with biscuits. Oh, wait a second. I got to think that through again. I got to think that through. Part of my love for England and going to graduate school over there at LSE would lead me to biscuits. But you know what? My roots are from Texas. I cannot say no to cornbread. I'm going with cornbread.
Cornbread, probably. I don't know what goes better with clam chowder. I'm gonna.
Oh, cornbread definitely.
Okay,
there
you
cornbread
go.
For sure. Yeah.
And that's going to be a hard one to serve in person unless you get somebody to ladle out everybody's bowl. Go forward. That's definitely not a buffet chowder anymore. So, well, Byron, where can people find out more about you, your conference, keep up with what you're doing, and thought leadership and more?
Contentmarketingconference.com is the place to go. If any of your guests would like to have free access to the portal, which is closing, by the way, on May 31st, have them send an email to byron@contentmarketingconference.com with a special subject header that says free shark access.
Perfect.
And we will give your lovely guests, Kenneth, a free couple of months, let's say, view into the portal, which has all the recordings from 2017 to 2020. And I think they'll really enjoy that. Lots of resources. The keynotes were there, the Ian and Andrews, Andrew Davis, Andrew Tarvin this year, and everything you saw. Your great presentation. So let's get your fabulous listeners and fans into CMC for a couple months, complimentary on the house.
Fantastic. Well, see, you've already transitioned from content marketing to affiliate marketing, and my payment is 0. So that's perfect. Well, Byron, it's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me, Ken.
So there was my conversation with Byron White, a serial entrepreneur, the founder of Writer Access and several other businesses, including Freelance Access, LifeTips, ideaLaunch, and he's also the chair of the Content Marketing Conference. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, his formula for a conference is very simply having great content, and it's obviously working extremely well. On top of the in-person events, he's also going to have a virtual event moving forward and is also all in with that additional experience. But in-person is still key, and he said, and I quote, "We're never going to end our quest to network together and to meet and greet and see people in person. Nothing will replace that experience, and nor as a human would any of us really want to." Amen to that. There's just a balance in figuring out live versus virtual, and the audiences will let the world know what the balance should be. The future will see better conferences in person, and we even touched on the production artistry of people like Drew Davis and Andy Cristodina. I know some others like the Brian Fanzos of the world, etc. Adding that element to your content will help you become a better speaker at better conferences, and I, like everyone, is challenged to do the same thing. We've all got up our game. Second, I spoke about this on a recent show with virtual presentations regarding speaking. Let's think about the events themselves. I love the massive events. There's so much energy, but there's a really great value to the boutique-ish style events that are a bit smaller. I don't want to weigh in too much of my own opinion or germophobia here, but events really have to think about the layouts, touching the water jugs, how food is served, doors are open and closed, seating next to each other. It's everything in the allure that brought people together in one venue, and now we're rethinking every bit of that. And it's such a challenge that's not easily answered, but likely one that we'll look at more closely for years and years to come, whatever the virus. I mean, after all, if they put up a glass partition between me and my empty seat next to me, then how am I going to get to my coffee? I mean, come on. Third, comedy is such a great tool, if you will, for conferences, and if you can do it well, then it is the best. But if you're not funny, or your only barometer for that is being funny with a group of friends or on social media like TikTok, then trust me, go try it in a few comedy clubs. It's hard for even some of the best comedians, but if done right, it kills, and it's why I love to try to make people laugh, especially when I'm on stage. And a rare fourth, you heard it from Byron. Speaker testimonial, Shark's a great speaker. Boom, mic drop. Ha. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Make sure to take advantage of Byron's generous offer mentioned earlier, and when we're back at conferences, also come say hello and give me an elbow bump at least. Join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.